Continuing with multiplying and dividing with negative numbers, we talked about doing it with integers. Now we're going to talk about doing it with decimals. And then later on in the course, we will talk about it with fractions. All right, so I'm not really going to go through the process of how we multiply decimals. If you need some help with that, then I would suggest revisiting some of the work you've done in previous courses. Also, let me know and I will try to find maybe a couple of videos that explain the process a little bit more. But I'm assuming that you already know how to do this, so it's really more about doing it with the positive and negative numbers. So all right, so the first one here, I have 1.2 multiplied with 0.5. Now, the general rule is when you multiply with decimals is that you maintain the same number of decimal places as you have in the original number. So, or in the two numbers. So what I'm going to do here is I'm looking at and I say, okay, I have one decimal place lower than ones. Here I have another decimal place lower than ones, which means I have two decimal places lower than one. So I know that my answer is going to have at least two decimal places below 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. And what I can do is I can really just say 12 multiplied times 5. And I've already decided that I know it's going to have two decimal points. So I don't need to worry about the decimal points here because the digits will stay the same. So 5 times 12 is really 60. If you don't know how to do that, it's 5 times 2 is 10. Okay, and then 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 is 6. Okay, so it's sort of like saying 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 10 is 50, 50 plus 10 is 60. Okay, so 60. All right, so I know that this number I have to have put in two decimal places below the 1, right? So I know that this is going to be, okay, 0.60. Okay, and I have two positives. So a positive multiplied with another positive is going to be a positive number. So my final answer in this case is 0.6. Okay, same problem essentially, except now I have negative 0.5. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I have this many groups, and this is what's going in the group. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm repeatedly getting negative 0.5. So again, I'm going to do 1.2, okay, times 5. We already know that this is 60. Okay, how many decimal places do I have? I have 1 here, 2 here, so I know that my answer is going to have 2 decimal places. I look and I see that I have 2 values here, okay, and I can fill in a 0 here, and because I know that one of my parts of this was negative, my final answer will stay negative. Okay, when we go back to the multiplication rules, remember when I have groups of positives, I'm going to keep positive, right? So remember, it's groups of stuff together gives a total amount of stuff. So if groups are positive and the stuff is positive, then the total amount of stuff will be positive. If the groups are positive and the stuff is negative, right, it's going down, I'm losing it, then my total amount will be a loss. So like, how much did I lose, which will be a negative. Okay, now if both of them happen to be negative, then it sort of reverses. It's sort of saying I lost it, but I'm talking about going backwards. So before I lost it, I would have had it. Thus, my answer would be positive when I multiply two negatives. And those same sort of ideas ring true with division as well. All right, let's try another one. Okay, negative 0.4 is equal to 0.7. Let's look to see how many decimal places I have. I'm going to have 2 decimal places. 1, 2. I also know that my answer here is going to be a negative, okay, because I know it's negative. One of these is negative, one of them is positive. Okay, so then I can just say, okay, well, 4 times 7. What is 4 times 7? That's 28. So I know that this answer will be 28 hundredths. So it's 0.28, and it's a negative 0.28. All right, let's try another one. Now, this is the same idea, same problem, right? I have negative 0.4 times negative 0.7. So I knew on this one that I had a decimal place and 2 digits, okay? I have a negative and another negative. My answer will be positive. I know 4 times 7 is 28, so I can fill in 8, and I have to have something in my ones place, so my final answer here is 0.28. All right. Now let's talk about dividing. Okay, well now I have 3.6 divided by 0.9. So this is the starting amount, right? I have a positive starting amount and I'm making this I like to think of when I'm using decimals here, I try to use that either this is what's going into my groups, okay? So I'm saying if I make groups with 0.9 in them, how is this going to work, okay? Now, my guess is at one point you probably did something that looks like this when you did division, okay? And then you took the decimal place and you moved it here and you moved one this way and you moved the decimal place, okay? That is correct. You are allowed to do that, okay? Now, let me explain sort of why. When you're dividing here, what you're doing is you're separating it into groups, right? We're assuming that we're talking about the same thing, right? This is 3.6 ones and this is 0.9 ones. Well, you can talk about this and the answer will be the same as if I say, you know what, I don't want to say this is ones, I want to make this tenths, okay? And that way I don't have parts of numbers anymore. So if I look at 3 and 6 tenths and I change this into tenths, well then this is 36 tenths. And what's here instead of 9 tenths is I have, right, 9 tenths. So then I have 36 divided by 9. Well, 36 divided by 9 is 4. Okay, now if you need to see what this looks like, if I have 3.6, okay, and I want to break it into groups, okay, and I want to put 0.9 into groups, okay, so here's one, I have 0.9 again, I do this, I get 0.9 again, and I do 0.9, and if I keep adding here, right, I get 0.9 plus another 0.9 will be 1.8, and then I add another one and it's 2.7, and I add another one, it's 3.6. And if you need to think about it as money, right? 90 cents plus another 90 cents plus another 90 cents plus another 90 cents, okay? 90 cents, $1.80, right? This would be, now I'm at $1.80. Add another 90 cents, now I'm at $2.70. And then finally I add another 90 cents, I get $3.60, okay? And what you notice is if I have $3.60 and I want to make groups of 90 cents, well, I'm going to get 4 of those groups, okay? Well, the idea when you change this is instead of saying $3.60, why don't I just turn it into dimes? So now I have 36 dimes, and if I make groups of 9, I get 4 in each group. Okay? And hopefully what you're seeing is the numbers look pretty similar, right? Doesn't this look like 9 times 2, right? 9 times 2, okay? 9 times 2 is 18, right? See, the digits are the same here, right? The digits are the same in here, but the actual value is different, right? There's a decimal place. But the numbers don't change, right? 9 times 3 is 27. 9 times 4 is 36, okay? It's just the value, the place value that changes. All right, so now let's say, what if I owe somebody? Let's say I lose $3 or I spend $3.60, and I do it in 90-cent increments, right? I like each thing I buy 4 things, right? Those are my groups, and they're 90 cents each. That would be inside of each group, okay? And I spent that money. How much did I spend on each thing, right? So, or how many times did I spend the money? So you do negative 3.6, and I'm going to change this so that it's 36 tenths divided by 9 tenths, right? Notice I just changed, instead of talking about 3.6, I changed the decimal over, okay? Just looking at it from a different point of view. 36 dimes, 9 dimes. Well, a negative divided, right? If I'm losing $36 and I lose it, right, and I'm doing 9 times of that, then it's negative 4. Okay, it's basically, look, if you notice, it's the same problem. It's just that was a positive 3.6. This time I'm taking a negative 3.6, so my answer is negative 4. Okay, I have negative 0.56 divided by 8. Okay, so now in this one, let's say 0.8. So this one is, if I look at this and I want to say, all right, let me look at this from perspective of, let me look at it from tenths, right? So if you change it, move it over 1 decimal place, you're going to get 5.6 divided by 8, okay? Well, 5.6 divided by 8 doesn't exactly help me that much, right? So let's do maybe 56 divided by 80. Okay, well, now this is going to look like that's not exactly helping either. Although if I look at this and I say, wait a second, 5.6 divided by 8, right? So if I say, if I have $5.60 and I share that among 8 people, okay? I know that each person is going to get less than $1, right? Because I don't have, if I had $8, then everybody would get $1. But I don't have that much money. I have $5.60. Well, hopefully you see 56 and 8, and you're looking at that and saying, those numbers look like they go in with each other, right? So If you don't notice that, if you don't see that 7 times 8 is 56, that's fine. So then what we're going to do is we'll say, okay, 5.6, and we're going to look to see how many times does 8 go into that, right? Well, 8 goes into 5 0 times, okay? And I'm maintaining it. I can't, if I take 5 ones and I try to share it with 8 people, everybody doesn't get it, right? Each person doesn't get a whole thing, so I have to divide. So now I'm going to say, okay, well, what if it's 56, right? What if it's 56 tenths? How much, if I have 56 of these and I divide it by 8, well, everybody's going to get 7, right? And I do 56 here, and I subtract, and I get 0, no remainder. So my answer here is going to be 0.7, right? But I'm losing this amount each time, right? So it's going to be negative 0.7. Now, I would highly, highly, highly suggest multiplying back, okay? So 0.8 and multiplying it with 0.7, right? A negative 0.7, and I'm multiplying these. Okay, so then I can do this. I can say, okay, my answer is going to be negative. It's going to be 7 times 8, right? 7 times 8 is 56. I have 2 decimal places, so I'm going to get 0.56. I have 1 negative, so I keep the negative. Negative 0.56. It matches up here, okay? Because this multiplied with this, right? This is groups of stuff equals total amount of stuff. Okay, let's try this one. I've got 1.2 divided by negative 0.03. Now, I know a lot of times people have told you in the past that if you divide when you divide, the numbers get smaller. Well, this is going to be an example of it not making it smaller. Okay, this is kind of like saying I have $1.20 and I want to break it into 3 cent groups. Okay, so I'm going to take $1.20 and break it into 3 cent groups, and I'm going to make each of those groups negative amounts. Okay, so then I'm going to see how many groups I need there. All right, so let's move the decimal places over. So then I get 12 divided by 0.3. Well, that's not going to help, so let's do it again. We're going to do 120 divided by 3. Okay, so basically what I just did is I said, okay, instead of making this 1.20, okay, I'm going to say let's make it 120 pennies and divide them into 3 penny groups. How many groups will that make? Well, it's going to make 40 groups, right? But in order to get this to be negative, right? If this is negative, and in order for my 40 groups of negative 3, that would be negative 20, so this is going to have to be negative 40. Okay, so let's try negative 40 times 3, a negative 3. If I multiply these, a negative times a negative is a positive, and 3 times 40 is 120, positive 120. There we go, it works. So my answer here is negative 40. Okay? All right. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to write down these problems, and I'd like you to try doing these on your own and bring your answers to class tomorrow, okay? Complete these for credit. If you don't have these done, then I can't give you credit because I would like to see you at least try. Give me somewhere to start with for tomorrow, okay? Good luck.